Hey everybody, welcome back to the Williams Elleby YouTube channel. I'm Joel, and this is my friend Alex Hoffspiegel, and he is going to join us today to talk about focus groups. A lot of people who aren't in the legal industry may not know what a focus group is, but Alex is going to go through it today, tell us what they are, how they can be helpful to litigants in civil cases, and I suppose you could be helpful in criminal cases too, in the right situation. But Alex is super smart. He's got his own personal injury practice. He graduated from law school in 2013 from Georgia State. We've gotten to know each other pretty well over the past couple of years, and one thing that he does for people and for attorneys like me and other attorneys is put together these focus groups. So that's what we want to talk about today, and how that might be beneficial to you if you're an attorney, or also just to help you understand what a focus group is and how it works if you have an attorney and they've told you they're going through this process. So why don't we start with the basics, Alex?
Sure.
And what is a focus group?
So a focus group can take a number of forms, but in its most broad sense, it is running a case by a group of people who are similar to the kind of folks you would find on a jury wherever a case is pending, and presenting the facts to them and seeing what they think about the issues, what's important to them, what's not important to them, what they like, most importantly, what they don't like, and what questions they would have, other information they'd want to hear about the case.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because as attorneys, we tend to get way down in the weeds with our case, right? And so sometimes we might be obsessing over this one legal issue that matters not to the jury. They could care less. And we can get tunnel vision sometimes and forget about what's really important. And so, at least in my experience, focus groups have sort of recentered me sometimes and helped me go, wait a minute, I'm focusing on something that's not going to really matter that much at trial. I should be focusing on this. Or it may point out a weakness, like you said, in my case, that I need to work up and address more. But what do you find is the major purpose of focus groups? Like, how are they, what do the attorneys that you work with in the past use them for?
You know, as lawyers, we go to law school to be taught to be objective, and we really lose sight of that once we represent someone. So usually where we think the action is in the case, you know, more often than not, it's there. We have our instincts are right. The more experienced we are, that becomes more true over the years, right? But figuring out whether that's the case and whether that resonates with everyday folks who would be on the jury is very important. So testing themes and seeing whether that is relatable to other people, whether your client relates to them, and whether, more importantly, the facts of what happened to them make sense as we present them is the highest and best use of a focus group, I think.
Yeah, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. Mm-hmm. But Chase and I had a case down in Cook County, Georgia, mm-hmm. and it was a trip and fall case. Mm-hmm. So it was a trip over a sidewalk where there was this flared side, and our allegations were that the flared side on this sidewalk was too steep and it caused our client to fall. So we had two defendants. One was the contractor who built this sidewalk, and the other was the store. Mm-hmm. I take the contractor's deposition, and he says, yep, if it's outside of code, which we'd proven it was, it's on me, it's my fault, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, cool. So we settled with the store and went to trial against the contractor. And I'm thinking, this is great. Like, he literally said in his deposition, it's on me if it's out of code. So we did a focus group at the state bar headquarters down in Tift County. Mm-hmm. And the focus group all told us, and lots of times you'll video it, like when they're deliberating, these people you bring in so you can see what they talk about. They were like, well, he fell on the store's property. It's the store's fault. Yeah. And I'm like, nah, no way. Like, not possible. The contractor's already admitted it's on him. And we go try the case, and guess who the real jury thought was at fault? The store. Yeah. And it's because I thought I was smarter than those 12 people that we paid to do a focus group, and I thought I knew better than them. And I was proven completely wrong. So it told me that just because I see the case one way doesn't mean that 12 strangers from that area are going to see the case the same way. So that was a hard lesson learned for me, that, you pay attention to these things and try to get the value from them that you're looking for. So let's take one step back.
Okay.
And when you're bringing in these people from the area, I'm guessing you try to use like somebody from that same county or at least the same area, so the demographics are the same?
Not necessarily. I only do them on Zoom now because, once COVID hit in March 2020, we moved all of them to Zoom. And I found it's much better to get more new people. I don't necessarily pull from the county where a case is pending. For example, what makes someone that lives in Sandy Springs in Fulton County, Georgia, different than someone that lives in DeKalb County in Dunwoody? And along those same lines, in Atlanta, we're a city of transplants. So that's pretty much true for all of Metro Atlanta. So I pull from similar cities. If I have a Metro Atlanta case, I might put out focus group advertisements for people in Tampa and Charlotte, maybe Houston. So I want to match the type of person more than where they live.
Gotcha. Yeah. So when you go about setting this up, let's stick to the Zoom because that's how you do it now. How do you recruit these people in and like make sure they're available when the time comes for the focus group?
So I usually almost exclusively use Craigslist. So I have a set advertisement that I put it out 2 days ahead of time, sort of like putting the bait trap in the water, and you just want to wait until I get probably about 150 applicants to fill 14 spots or so. And once I wait a day, the day before the focus group, so it's fresh on people's mind when I accept their applications, I start going through, picking out folks that I think are going to fit my demographics, have similar backgrounds to the folks that would be on my real jury.
Gotcha. And so how can an attorney, if they're considering doing a focus group, make a wise decision on whether a focus group is a good use of their time for that particular case?
Well, I say focus group your case early and often. I think any case can benefit from a focus group. Do you want to devote the time and resources for a full 3-hour or half-day session for, a soft tissue case, as we call them? Probably not. You can either split that cost and that time up among several cases or not. But
that's a good point. I've never thought about that. So if you've got 3 or 4 smaller value cases, then try to just do an abbreviated version of it, use that same slot of time, and then disperse the expense out amongst all the cases so it's not cost prohibitive for one case.
Yeah, I've done 3 cases in 3 hours before. As long as you're judicious with your time and stay on task, you can get it done.
Yeah, and that makes sense because if you've got a $5,000 case, you're probably not calling 20 witnesses anyway.
Exactly. And you've got to simplify it even beyond that anyways, because, folks only can absorb so many key facts. And that's one thing to do over a multi-day trial, but when you've got 20, maybe 30 minutes to present the case to them, you've got to distill it down to its finest parts.
Yeah. When you see the most effective attorneys that use focus groups to the fullest extent that they can be used to, how do they typically do it? Do they just like sit there and tell the jury about the case, or does, like Chase and I have done it before, where I'll pretend to be the plaintiff's attorney and I'll present an abbreviated version of our best facts, and then maybe he'll pretend to be the defense attorney and he'll present an abbreviated version of their best facts, and then we just kind of see what sticks? Or
so, there's a number of different ways you can do it. The main 2 ways I do it is, one, a narrative focus group. And so we do that during discovery, sometimes even earlier if we're deciding whether to accept a case, and then building up to the trial. And that's where we give first a neutral overview of the facts of the case, stuff that's not really in dispute. Then we give a summary of the plaintiff's arguments and the defendant's responses to those. And that has to be a maximum really of 20 or 30 minutes. And later on in that focus group, we can intersperse some video clips, maybe an examination of a client or a key witness or a medical provider. The other type we do is the clopenings, which is what you're talking about, where a lawyer plays a role as a plaintiff's lawyer than a defense lawyer. We usually only do that right before trial when the facts are fully developed and a pretrial order has been entered. So there's really good clarity as to what the case is going to be tried on.
Right. And hopefully by that time you have a better idea of like what evidence is coming in, what evidence the judge has already decided to exclude, and things like that.
Right. Yeah, you're going to want a pretrial order entered.
Yeah.
You're going to want to know how the judge is leaning on certain issues so that an accurate case is being tried.
Yeah. And so I know we were kind of talking about helping you identify issues for trial. Do attorneys find focus groups useful for determining what the value of the case may be for either settlement purposes or what to ask for at trial?
Generally speaking, the lowest value you're going to get, and perhaps it can really be hurtful to you, is trying to figure out what your case is worth. If I could tell a lawyer who hires me what their case is worth, I would probably be nearly retired by now. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is, if you get 12 people in a room and you ask them what the case is worth, you're not necessarily going to get a large enough sample size to have anything approaching realistic. Mm-hmm. There are some outfits out there who do a good job of helping assess your case value, but that's when they have a data set of well over 100, maybe approaching 200 or 300 jurors.
Right.
I have done a half dozen focus groups on the same case before, and after a while we start to see a trend of the numbers. We get some reliability. Certainly an ask is helpful. Setting a threshold of what you should ask for is one thing. Another thing is getting a juror's opinion as to whether it really is a substantial 7-figure case, for example, versus a small one. We've had focus groups who have loved liability and been all over the conduct of the defendant, and then it comes to say, talk about value, and they see it as a $10,000 case.
Right. Yeah, and to me, so what I'm hearing you tell me is, maybe if you just do one focus group with 12 or 14 people, mm-hmm. Sure, they can give you a number, but it might not be the most reliable thing. But if you do multiple focus groups, or if you do a specific, I don't even know if it would be a focus group, but if you bring in like 100 people, mm-hmm. the mean of that's going to be much more likely to fall in line with what the jury would do than just a one-off 12-person focus group.
Sure. I like to think of what my likely result is on one of my own cases. If I try it 10 times, what's going to happen 4 times? What's going to happen 3 times? So you may or may not get that. And the evidence is going to continue to develop. So you try it, you focus group a case numerous times, and the results are just going to be different until you've distilled it to its finest form.
Yeah. And I've had some attorney friends of mine, and I'm sure you've probably seen this before too with some of your clients, is, they'll do a few focus groups and take the results of it, and if they want to try to get their case settled, well, assuming the focus groups went their way and they like what they're hearing, that they will take that and then send it to the defense and say, hey, look, here's what you're dealing with. Like, we've focus grouped this 3 or 4 times. They're coming back at an average of $1 million for this case. You're only offering $200,000. You might want to reassess this. But then, if you focus group it 3 or 4 times and you lose every time, then you're probably not going to send that to your opponent, right?
Sure. And I've had plenty of lawyers who have hired me who have done that, especially at mediation. You've got to be prepared to have the defense call your bluff on it if you haven't given a fair presentation. So I always tell people, make sure you are comfortable sharing with them the actual video of the presentation you've given to the jurors, so you have some credibility with them. I've also used it as a reality check for clients sometimes, because someone who has lived through their injury and the whole ordeal is not going to be able to perhaps appreciate how other people who don't know them and are probably distrustful of them because they're sitting in court and making a claim, view the case.
Okay, so if somebody's looking to or considering doing a focus group, mm-hmm. What are they looking at as far as cost and time commitment and that kind of thing? And I'm sure different people charge different amounts, but what should they reasonably expect?
So if you're hiring someone out, a third party like myself, the cost can run the gamut. There are companies out there who charge upwards of $100,000. There's people like me who do the more simple, straightforward, shorter sessions. You're going to be paying a few $1,000s for consulting. I'm paying each juror $100 for their participation. The focus group usually, at least on my end, is 3 hours long. I like to spend a couple hours preparing for it with the lawyers. And then, I handle the rest, which is juror recruitment, payment and so forth.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it really just depends on how much time you need and how complex the case is and how many people you want to bring in and all that kind of stuff.
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach at all. And the best thing about a focus group is you can be really flexible and fit the needs of the case.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good way to sum it up is it's a way that you can find out what really matters to everyday people in your case. If you do it enough times, maybe you get some ideas to what they think about the value, but really it's honing in on the issues. What's your strongest arguments, and are they buying what you're selling? And then it's a way to be flexible instead of trying to look at other cases that are not like yours, because as attorneys, like, we look at past cases and what's happened in other places and other jurisdictions, and we try to find something similar and go, okay, well, that case resolved for $500,000 or $50,000 or whatever, but it's not our case, right? And so if we can put our case in front of 12 people who would be somewhat like people on the jury, we're probably going to get some real good, honest feedback from their perspective as to what our case is. And we have like you said, you have the flexibility to do it in an hour or 3 hours or however long you need. You can do that and adjust it to your case. So I will tell you, Alex is really good at what he does. And he's a good lawyer too. He's not just a focus group person. He's a very good personal injury lawyer. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, either to consult with you as a lawyer or to consult with you about a focus group, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you, Alex?
Just Google me. I try to be easy to find online, and like your firm, we're a small family practice. So I am easy to track down.
All right. You should spell your last name
so
they find you correctly.
I do it every day. So H-O, 2 F's as in Frank, S as in Sam, P as in Peter, I-E-G-E-L, Hoffspiegel.
All right, cool. Well, thank you everyone for spending some time with Alex and I today. Thank you, Alex, for joining me today. Really appreciate it and sharing your expertise on focus groups with us. If this video has been helpful to you, we'd appreciate you giving us a thumbs up, sharing it with your friends or some other peers that may be considering doing a focus group. And of course, as always, hit that subscribe button, and we will see you next week.